All right, let's talk templates and let's talk buying templates specifically. All right, so I feel like most of you guys are probably familiar with templates, but just in case someone's not familiar on here, it's just a way in Pro Tools where we can save a bunch of settings from our session that we can then easily import later into different sessions, different projects. So it's basically a way to really easily recall things like what tracks you used, what plugins you used on tracks, certain track presets, stuff like that. It's very similar to using templates in any other kind of software. And actually, I'm not going to talk about working with or making templates at all in this video. I think I already have a video that's kind of about that, so I'm going to put a card to that video up on the screen for you guys. I'm going to be talking about the specific idea of buying a template from somebody else here. I've noticed over the years that there are some people in this space, and this space being like YouTube and online, people that are talking about audio engineering and music production, that kind of thing. I've noticed some people are selling their templates online, and I've actually chosen not to do that for some very specific reasons. And I guess if you asked me why that is, why I haven't been selling templates, if I were to boil it down, it would mostly be because I feel like it's not the most helpful thing for the people buying them. And it's also the people buying them often don't really fully understand what they're buying. And I guess that's part of why it's not the most helpful thing for them. But yeah. And with that said, this is not an anti-template video. I've used templates a whole bunch. I've made my own templates. I found them very helpful to use. I think templates are great. I've just never bought one. I've never bought a template, but I've found them very useful. For example, if you're working on an album and you want to really quickly duplicate a bunch of your settings from one song to the next, that's a great way to use templates. I've found them very useful. I've just never bought one from somebody else. And they're also great for if you're doing the same type of processing over and over, you can really quickly duplicate what you're doing without having to manually do it over and over each time, especially if you're doing similar or the same types of movements within your mix every single time. So, it's a great way to jump to a starting point that's a little bit or a lot farther along in the process. But, with that said, I'll often just import session data and not actually bother saving out a template. So there's multiple ways to do anything in Pro Tools. And this is no exception, right? Templates are no exception. The idea of importing settings from one session to another, you can do that by importing session data. You can do that by saving out templates. You can do that by saving presets in your plugins, for example. There's different ways to do it. And before you guys come at me, I do know that each of those things have, their own sets of pros and cons. And so for any given circumstance, you might decide that one is a better system than another. All right, so back to the idea of buying a template and specifically not making one yourself, just purchasing one from someone else. So I guess the reason why I'm making this video is that I see, periodically on like a forum or a Facebook group or some kind of post, someone will say that they bought a template off of, XYZ influencer or someone online that's talking about music production or audio engineering. Point is, they bought this template and now all of a sudden they're having trouble. And so they are asking the community for help working with this template. And that's always met by, it seems to always be met by a million people like commenting on the post or on the thread or whatever it is, saying how you shouldn't have bought this template. And so they're kind of ridiculing the person for having bought the template to begin with. They're like, bro, how dumb can you be? Why are you buying templates? And it's like, first of all, they're a beginner, so they didn't know. No one told them. And I feel like it's just not the most constructive thing to say at that point, that step, that point in the game. It's like the person already bought the template. You're not really helping them because they can't go back in time and not buy it. Now they're trying to work with what they've got, right? So I feel like it's not the most constructive thing for people to comment, even if, sometimes I kind of agree with it. It's like, maybe you shouldn't have bought a template, but it's not like it's their fault. They just didn't know, right? I just feel like it's not the most constructive thing to say on someone's post. It's like they're asking you for help, and instead of helping them, you're just telling them that they made a mistake to begin with. So I think essentially what the problem is here is that the person buying the template didn't fully understand what they were buying, and then the influencer, or whatever you want to call them, the person selling the template to them, didn't bother or have any desire or attempt to educate the person on what they were selling to them. And maybe that's not always the case. Maybe sometimes they do try to tell them what they're selling. Maybe they do try to educate them about it, and it's like, people wanted it, so I'm offering it. I'm sure that happens too. I'm not like hating on the people selling templates all the time, right? But I also think sometimes the case might be that the person selling the template is more focused on selling something to them and making, the quick buck instead of educating the consumer and making sure that they're actually getting to where they want to be. And I think it's sad. Like honestly, I feel like it's a sad situation because even for the person selling the template, a lot of times they're just trying to take their skill set and make some money off of it. They're just trying to survive in a very, very difficult industry. And you can't really blame them for that either, right? And then on the buyer end, it's kind of obvious, right? At the worst end of the spectrum, it's someone who's a beginner to something. They're into the same stuff you're into as the influencer, as the seller. And on the worst end of the scale, so not every situation here, but it could be viewed as someone taking advantage of these beginners, right? So, with all those thoughts in mind, I wanted to chat a bit about the pros and cons of buying templates, in my mind at least. And, I don't think it's all that bad either if you actually know what you're getting into. So, let's chat about it. So let's talk about it. Let's start with the cons, right? So if you're looking at buying a template, the template is not made for your music, for your microphone levels, for your voice, for your arrangement. It's basically not catered to anything that you have created because the creator of the template hasn't seen your stuff. So chances are it's not going to have the settings correct for your music specifically. You're going to have to make some adjustments to things like the plugin settings, the levels, all that stuff. It's not going to automatically sound as good on your music as it did on the influencer's music. Another thing that beginners often don't realize, and a lot of the times these influencers or whatever you want to call them don't even mention this, and I think that's pretty bad, is the idea that you might not even own the plugins that are within this template. And if you don't own the plugins, you can't use them. So if you don't own every single plugin that's being used within the template, you basically can't use the whole template. You're paying for something that you can only use part of. And then once you buy the template, if you want to get to the point where you can use the whole thing, you might end up shelling out more and more cash for all these plugins that you then want to use because they're in the template. So you might think you're spending X dollars on this template and getting this thing done. And then you're suddenly surprised that you have to spend even more dollars to get to that point, right? So you might have to buy a whole bunch of software, incurring additional expense that you weren't expecting, which is not fun. And then on top of that, you're probably almost definitely going to have to make a bunch of adjustments in order to get it sounding how you want it to sound, which means you're going to have to learn to use your ear and mix anyway, to some extent. So essentially, templates are not a magic button. A lot of beginners treat them like they are a magic button, like they can just help you magically get to where you want to be. And it's just, unfortunately, it's not going to work that way. It's a mega bummer. It's a huge bummer, but they don't really cut it for that. There's no magic button. But with that said, even considering the fact that I've never bought a template myself, I think there are some reasons when it does make sense to go ahead and buy a template. So I think if you think of it as a way to get insight into someone else's workflow and creative process, it can probably be very beneficial, right? It can get you started, right? It can get you going initially, and it can give you creative ideas that you might not have thought of yourself, right? Even if you then have to tweak them and adjust them to match your own music, I think it could be good for that. And especially if it's from an engineer that you really respect, or if you really want to emulate their sound, getting that insight into how they're doing things could be very beneficial. I would just view it as more of a form of studying than anything else. It's not like it's going to be some magic thing where you drop your audio files into it and then suddenly your music sounds like this person mixed it, or, like some Billboard chart music, right? It's not like a magic button. It's more of a way to get insight into how you could get to where you want to get to. And I think for that reason, it could be very beneficial, right? So I think if you're going to buy a template, if you come at it with that attitude, it could be a very positive experience. It makes me so sad when people think it's a magic button and then they spend money on it and then they realize it's not going to do what they expected it to do. It's not like a snap to a certain sound type of thing. So I guess that's why I made this video. I think those are all my thoughts on it. Yeah. Yeah, so I guess that's it. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you buy templates? Have you ever bought templates? What was your experience with it like? I don't have a ton of experience with it. So maybe I'm just seeing this through a certain filter, right? I'm only seeing the people online that are complaining because they're having trouble. But let me know what you think in the comments below. And you know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I'd appreciate all of that stuff. And other than that, I have a Patreon. So it's patreon.com/CatoNoise. My patrons get access to additional content. We have a Discord server. If you've been watching my videos, you've heard this every time now. I'm sorry I keep repeating it. I come out with new videos every Wednesday. And thanks for watching, guys. I hope you guys are all doing well. Okay. So many sad people online that are bummed about their templates not doing what they want them to do. I just feel for people when I see them online and it's like, I got this template and it's not doing what I want it to do. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you got to this point. I'm sorry someone brought you to this point and let you be here. I'm sorry someone led you to this point. You know, it feels like someone led them to that point. And I know it's not always malicious intent, but it's like, I don't know. I feel for people. Because it's like when you're beginning, you don't really know. You don't know. I don't know. And you think about like visual analogs, right? It might be like buying a filter for an image. And usually when you buy a filter for an image, it kind of does bring the image to look like what the examples look like, right? A lot of times it does do that, especially nowadays when we have all these like cell phone cameras that do a great job of getting a nice clean photo as a starting point. So I guess if you think about it that way, it'd be like, yeah, I mean, if you could buy a filter for an image and it would actually do the thing and make it look similar to the original, the example, maybe not original. I don't know if that's the right word, but it doesn't do that with templates, right? It doesn't really work that way. Maybe an image person would argue with me about that, though. Maybe people who are into like photography would actually know the difference and be like, it's not going to get you there. I bet they would. Oh, well, what are you going to do? Oh, I've been working on editing some footage from my move. So I'm going to have a video all about my move soon, I hope. We'll see. It's kind of a pain to edit that kind of footage, but maybe it's just because I'm not as into it, so I procrastinate it. But that video might be coming out. I don't know. It might come out soon. It might come out. I hope it comes out. Okay, bye.